Big Ten Media Days, it is officially here. MSU goes Wednesday, and that is when Jonathan Smith can start setting the tone of the identity for this program. Let's go.
You are Locked On Spartans, your daily podcast on the Michigan State Spartans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode of Locked On Spartans is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as playoffs wind down. The sports stop sporting like we want them to. But hey, this summer, FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Spartan friends, Spartan family, Locked On Spartans listeners, thank you all so much for kicking off your day with us here at Locked On Spartans. Or if you're enjoying this live show on YouTube, maybe you're ending your day with us here at Locked On Spartans, your team in green and white 5 days a week. Please rate, review, subscribe, comment below. Reach out to us at LockedOnSpartans@gmail.com. It's more we like it. And also, join me in introducing, for the second time in this show, Brendan Moore, absolute whiz kid over at Spartans Illustrated. He will be boots on the ground at Media Day. Of course, that's what we're going to talk about here in the first segment. But Brendan, this event, Media Days, this is the official songbird that college football is finally upon us, right?
It's like the unofficial, official start to the season is how I like to put it. I mean, it's talking season, so football's approaching.
You know, and usually Media Days, it's like, what can you learn? What good can you possibly get out of them? But that's not going to be our take here today, Brendan, because, look, us State fans, we have known Jonathan Smith for a few months now, right? Maybe not the rest of the conference or anyone else across the nation that's going to be listening into anything that Big Ten Media Days has to offer. But look, there were a few knocks that we had on the Mel Tucker era, right? Some of them on the field, some of them off the field. One of those glaring ones is that there was never really an identity with this team. And I know that's more so of on the field stuff, you know, what kind of team are you going to trot out on the field? But I think that could start in Media Days right now. You establish the identity of MSU footballs, and it starts here in two ways. It's either obviously the obvious one, what he talks about. Okay, we're going to be a physical team, a run-first team. Michigan State fans have already heard that, especially in the introductory press conference that he had a few months ago now. Or else to start parading the offense. Start parading Aiden Childs, how exciting that you will be on the field. Start getting the seams of the DNA of this team ingrained into more than just State fans, but everyone else in the Big Ten. And number two, just how he comes off. And this isn't really, a slight to Mel Tucker. I thought he was fine in front of a microphone personally, but he's direct and no nonsense. And he's oddly got that Midwestern charm, even though he's a California guy, but he can establish the identity starting right now. So yes, it's talking season. You might not get much out of most teams, but I think for first-year head coach Jonathan Smith in East Lansing, this could be an important session for him coming up on Wednesday. Am I overreaching here, you think?
No, I mean, it's really his first impression to kind of a national audience, really, since his introductory press conference. And even if you don't want to include the introductory press conference, then it would be his first kind of introduction to kind of the national college football fans, national college football media. So, I mean, it is important kind of the how you talk to the media,
Yeah.
kind of just everything about that. So what I want to see is kind of an underdog mentality for the players, from Jonathan Smith, kind of, because we'll get into the preseason poll, but it seems coming in with a lot of doubters, from media, fans alike, college football fans just in general. So I'm interested to see what kind of approach do they take. Are they humble? Do they even care about this preseason poll and take it into account and kind of use it as bulletin board material? We'll see. I do want to see a team and guys that are motivated by this and kind of use it as motivation here. So
I like that, because we are going to get to that Big Ten media poll here in a little bit. Michigan State, just to spoil it, 16th. But hey, in the new Big Ten, that's out of 18 teams. It's not the complete doghouse. But that will be interesting to see how they hit everything. And that's kind of where I'm on the fence of what do I want to hear from Jonathan Smith? Other than establishing the identity, talking more about the offense, kind of parading what you have to offer here at Michigan State. I just wonder, if we get any language that suggests things are coming along better as expected, because during the offseason, we heard it was more than Jonathan Smith. It was from the coaches too. Namely, Joe Rossi is the one that I'm going to paraphrase here. But it was, hey, when he's installing this new scheme to a bunch of players that have been here or transfers, you're kind of teaching everything as fast as you possibly can, but also you want to take it slow with them that they understand. It was kind of like striking that perfect balance here. I do wonder, especially since Jonathan Smith has had a rebuild over at Oregon State, if he's going to allude to anything like, hey, no, this is actually already coming along a little further than we have expected to. This player is already shining. I just wonder if we can get any extra nuggets out of this media day session. So that'll be fascinating to see how they play that whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, we are 8 months into Jonathan Smith era. I know it seems kind of weird to think about that, but like he's had time to kind of settle himself in East Lansing, get going in recruiting, obviously. So getting kind of a progress report of how he thinks he did in the spring transfer portal window, how he thinks recruiting is going is also going to be something I'm interested to see what he says about that. And one thing, this is just in general, but media days, I feel like at every media day, whether it be Big Ten, SEC, ACC, Big 12, every coach, I feel like they say, oh, this is the deepest team we've ever had. I feel like we need to use that phrase in all media days. I feel like that's a curse. I want to run a statistic this year. I want to see what coaches said that. I want to see if they better or worse, if it was their best team they've ever had or not. So I just don't want them to say that because I feel like it's a curse.
Or if they have like injury issues and then next thing you know, they have walk-ons on the field. Which coach is just a living walking jinx? I mean, who shouldn't be talking like that whatsoever? But no, if I got to feel if Jonathan Smith says something like that, like, oh, we are very deep this year. I think like a siren would go off because this is why Michigan State's probably ranked 16th out of 18 teams. Or, you know, there are some metrics that have them winning just 2 Big Ten games out there. It's not necessarily the deepest team. Across the board, you feel okay about the starters more times than not. Yes, there are some question marks all over the field, like receiver, which we'll get to here in the third segment, but I think that would be a bunch of nonsense if Jonathan Smith said that. But again, that's one of their favorite buzzwords to use. I mean, just by and large with college coaches, so we'll see.
Yeah, so we'll see, but I mean, deepest team, I mean, it's his first year, so he has the freedom to say a little bit more than some other coaches who are entering, their third, fourth, fifth year. But I mean, it's definitely not a super deep team, in my opinion, compared to past Michigan State teams. But yeah, we'll see. There's a reason why they were picked 16th.
And the guy's going because he will be traveling with 3 players. It'll be Jack Velling, the tight end transfer from Oregon State, and then 2 guys that have been here for, well, at least one season. Nate Carter, he came here last year, transferred from UConn, of course, and then Dillon Tatum, who's been here since the beginning of his career. Really quick, your thoughts on the 3 guys that they're sending down. I'm pretty sure that, a lot of people are going to think, no quarterback. That's no Aiden Childs. That's strange. But what's your thought on not sending Aiden Childs down there and sending these 3 guys instead?
I'd be more worried if Childs was a junior or a senior and he's been a starter for a year. So since he's a sophomore and it's his first year at Michigan State, I'm not super worried. I know Velling's in his first year, but he's plenty experience enough to lead this team. He actually has starting experience, whereas Childs doesn't have that starting experience quite yet. So I'm not too concerned that Childs isn't going. I don't think it's a sign of, now he's not going to start this year or whatever. I think that'd be a little bit ridiculous. So I'm not worried about Childs not going. Carter, great leader. Velling, also a great leader, I think. And he'll probably be one of the standout performers this year, probably one of the best players on the team. And then Tatum's also a leader in the secondary. So I think those are 3 of the guys I would have kind of on a short list of who I would send. So I have no problem with Smith sending those 3 guys with them.
Yeah, and as much as I'd love to drum up drama here, be this talking head that is just out for outrage, I don't really care that Childs isn't going. This kid was in front of a microphone for a combined 75 hours with the media during like the spring sessions. I don't know. I think he's answered every question he could possibly answer. I am glad that they do have at least one Oregon State transfer in Jack Velling just to maybe kind of, get the comparison from his time in Corvallis to how it's like in East Lansing. But give Childs a break, maybe. I mean, again, I don't think a lot of people are outraged about this. I'm certainly not one of these people, but I don't really think it's anything.
We'll get a lot of interviews with Childs coming up this season and in fall camp. So don't be worried if you're thinking, we're not going to hear from Childs for a while. No, you will.
Yeah. And you're going to hear from more of us. That's right. And also you, the fine folks over on Twitter, because we polled you guys your reaction to Michigan State being 16th out of 18 teams. But first, I'm so sorry I got to do this, Brandon. I got to send you to the silence because it's time to talk to people's ears off really quick about FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook. Let's say you're getting fired up for the football season and you just want to wager some cash on your Spartans right now, go ahead. Mosey on over to America's #1 sportsbook. We are talking FanDuel because, hey, for week 1, they already got the line for Michigan State versus FAU as things stand right now. Michigan State, 11.5-point favorites over the Owls that will be visiting Spartan Stadium in week 1. Guys, I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs have winded down, we are getting fewer games and the sports aren't sporting like we want them to. But FanDuel lets it keep going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And let me tell you, that is a lot. This summer, FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That is right. There's something for everyone, every day, all summer long. So what are you waiting for out there? Head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. It's FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Now let's drag him back on here. It's the one, the only Brendan Moore of Spartans Illustrated. Just like I said, 16 out of 18 teams, and I see that come across my Twitter timeline today. I'm thinking a few thoughts, and I can't formulate my own opinion because I was in between. Good. Disrespect is back. This is the chip on the shoulder we need. Let's go. I wish they ranked us even lower, Brendan. I'm actually insulted they ranked us 16th. Then a part of me was like, these idiots in the media over there at Cleveland.com giving their votes and placing Michigan State 16th. Don't they know we've had a great transfer portal haul? Don't they know that Brian Lindgren and Jonathan Smith are above average offensive minds? And we had very below the last few years. But then again, I'm thinking like, you know what? A little part of me maybe says, based on the last 2 years, based on the depth issues we've been talking about, maybe that's not like the worst ranking in the world. So I went to Twitter. I laid out those 3 options. Are you saying, good, I like the disrespect? No, I am mad at the voters. Or that sounds about right. After 734 votes, the disrespect is back portion got 65% of the votes. That ranking sounds about right. It was 26%. And then the mad people, you made up 7.8% of the vote. Where are you at, Brendan? Do you like seeing the Spartan Dogs back in the underdog role and just being disrespected like the good old D'Antonio days? Or where are you at here?
I do think in general as a program, that's where Michigan State thrives. You mentioned it like under Mark D'Antonio. They had that mentality. That's something I want to see from this team under Jonathan Smith. So I don't think 16th is the worst ranking ever. I mean, if you look at kind of 12 through 18, those are pretty much toss-ups in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, I could easily see Northwestern having a kind of disappointing season after a good season last year, kind of come back down to earth. UCLA is a first-year head coach. Indiana, first-year head coach, a ton of new pieces. I mean, there's just a ton of like mystery teams in Michigan State's kind of area in those rankings. So I could, like, if I were to make a ranking 1 through 18, I don't know where I would place Michigan State, but I would probably have them anywhere from like 12 to 17 range. So I wouldn't be too upset with 16. And also, I just wouldn't put a whole lot of stock in a preseason poll. That's just me. Like I said, with the transfer portal, there's just so many question marks and so many first-year head coaches. Like I mentioned, UCLA is a first-year head coach. Indiana's a first-year head coach. A couple of second-year head coaches, too, at Northwestern and at Purdue. So there's a ton of mystery in teams like ranked 12 through 18. So we'll see.
Yeah. I think Michigan State's kind of lurking in the shadows too. You know, like it's a program that hasn't been to a bowl in back-to-back seasons. And yes, like, you know what, it's been a little thin in the depth as we know, but like they have gotten some really solid players. Like they are bringing over a quarterback that has already been with the system for 1 year. So maybe it's just an afterthought of anyone voting, because I doubt that every single person that voted in this poll really combed through each team's schedule. So I don't know if they saw Michigan State, what they start the year with and what they end the year with. We'll talk about this right now, because let me just go through all 18 super quick. I'm going to sound like an auctioneer right now because we're going to go 1 through 18. Ohio State, number 1, they got 21 first place votes. Oregon, number 2, they got 6 first place votes. Number 3, Penn State. Number 4, Michigan. Number 5, Iowa. Number 6, USC. Number 7, Wisconsin. Number 8, Nebraska. Number 9, Rutgers. Number 10, Washington. Number 11, Maryland. Number 12, Minnesota. Number 13, Illinois. Number 14, Northwestern. 15 is UCLA. 16 are Michigan State Spartans. And then 17, Indiana, with 18, the basement being Purdue. Brendan, after all that talking, the good news is that Michigan State this year, they take on 3 of the bottom 6 teams. The bad news, if you caught the first 5 teams right there, they take on 4 of the top 5 teams in this poll. Of course, Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan, and Iowa. And, oh yeah, by the way, It's all in a row. Like all four of those games are right in a row. So let me just step into a hypothetical world. Brendan, commissioner of the Big Ten, he comes up to you and says, Mr. Moore, you actually get to change the schedule if you want. Do you want to spread out these four behemoth teams that Michigan State is playing, or do you like that Michigan State plays all four of these teams in a row and just almost gets it over with in the month of October?
You know what? I might rather play those four teams all in November. Try to get to 6 wins before you hit November, and then if you're most likely going to lose those games based on how I see it right now. So why not just we'll kind of rally around September, October, try to get to 6 wins, try to get to bowl eligibility, and then we'll just see what happens in November. We'll see what we got. So maybe there's that path, but I mean, I'd probably wish to spread them out a little bit more. Obviously, maybe one early October, one a couple weeks later, and obviously bye placements too, bye week placements.
Yeah.
In a perfect world, you would be able to have a bye week maybe before you play Michigan, which is probably the biggest game of the year, obviously, and maybe before you play, Iowa or Oregon or Ohio State. So probably bye week before the Iowa, because I do think that's the most winnable of those four games. So yeah, in a perfect world, give me them spread out and give me a bye week before a couple of those games.
Yeah, if I could just cry and whine right now, I would love a bye week if it was up to me. Between that Ohio State and Oregon game, having it back to back is one thing. Having it
on a short week,
1 day shorter of rest, and that's right, you're flying across the country to play this game too. Thanks guys, that's just really kind of you. I'm glad this is gonna be a nationally televised game in front of the whole world to see. It's No. We're trying to keep the vibes up right now. I'm sorry.
One other thing about this is I wish they would put the criteria out there a little bit more. I'm looking at the website right now. I don't see any really criteria. Like when I'm talking about criteria, is this a ranking of how these writers think these teams will finish? Is it projected that Ohio State, Oregon are going to be in the Big Ten championship, or is this how they see them right now? So in my opinion, I view a preseason poll as how I see these teams right now, not necessarily, this team is a workable schedule, so I'm going to rank them above a team who doesn't have a workable schedule, even though I think this team might be better than the other team. So I wish they would kind of publish that criteria a little bit better. So, but yeah.
A lot of interpretation just amongst all the media members. But no, I mean, I'm glad Cleveland.com does this, because there are some conferences that just will have a media and coaches poll. Big Ten does not do that, so Cleveland.com takes matters into their own hands, and they have been for quite some time. So thank you to the hardworking people over there. Really quick, Brendan, we're just going to get to this little news blip here before we start talking wide receivers. But Netflix, hey, they're going to have a documentary in August. It's part of their Untold series on the Connor Stallions saga over at Michigan. Of course, that directly impacts Michigan State. Not only did they play them this year, the last few years when this whole saga was going on, but as we all know, man, it looks very, very much like Connor Stallions on the sideline of CMU. So that's nice that we're going to get a documentary here before we ever find out what was going on over at Central Sideline. But let me put it this way. I could be on a cross-country flight with just a screen in front of me, and the only thing that I could watch is that documentary. Brandon, I think I'd be staring at a black screen the entire flight. I don't have even any interest in watching a second of this. This is the same series that did the Johnny Manziel documentary. Completely blew over, Johnny Manziel and who he was. They also did Swamp Kings, the whole Urban Meyer at Florida thing. Except one problem, they barely talked about everything that went on at Florida under Urban Meyer. So it's going to be propaganda. It's going to be puff. Look, if I could take it back even further, The Last Dance, that fantastic multi-series documentary about Michael Jordan, that came to us at a beautiful time. There was no sports in the world. It was during COVID. So while it was fun to watch, it also kind of, made every documentary from that point on just pure propaganda, at least from a sports angle. So, no, we all know what's going to happen. It'll be whitewashed. He's going to be made the victim somehow in all this. So I don't care to watch this. Your thoughts, Brendan, after I just went on that little soliloquy there.
Yeah, I did see that. He's going to be basically telling his side of the story. So, I mean, we'll see if there's another side, if they present another side at all or not. But I mean, based on what we've seen from Netflix in the past, I do think it's just going to be Stallions telling his story, his side of the story, whether he includes, I'm curious to see if he talks about Central Michigan, Michigan State, that incident there when he was apparently on the sidelines. Hasn't been confirmed yet, but sure it looks like him. So, but we'll see. I don't think it'll be great. I think it'll be kind of one-sided, but we'll see.
I don't even care to see a second of it. Again, I cannot make that point clear enough.
I'll watch it for you.
Do you know what? If you don't mind, that'd be great. We'll just let you tell us all about it. I won't even be on camera. You can just have the whole show that day, because nothing of substance is going to come out of it. Just like the other untold documentaries that they've done on Netflix. Anyway, it's been far too long since we talked about anything Connor Stalions related. So I feel like I got to scratch that itch right there. Let's talk wide receivers, because look, we've talked about it a few times. It's why Michigan State has a low over-under in Vegas. It's why that they might be rated as low as they are in the preseason poll. But there are some depth questions around the field. Of course, not every single position, but one of them has to be wide receiver. We've talked about the offensive line. They have their depth problems, especially behind the starters of the defensive line. We all know what's going on there. Could they be solid this year with the starters? Yes, but man, they've had to replace a lot too. The receivers. Yes, you are returning Montorie Foster, Jaron Glover, Antonio Gates Jr., Alante Brown. But, man, from last year, 4 of the 6 yards leaders are gone. Okay, that's Carr, that's Mosley, Fitzpatrick, Henry. They're all gone from last year. Foster, of course, he led the team with 576 yards. Jaron Glover, 261 yards in just 8 games. And you're also replacing 4 of the top 6 receptions leaders. It's the same 4 guys: Malik Carr, Trey Mosley, Chris Fitzpatrick, and Tyrell Henry. And actually, Nate Carter was 5th place with 22 catches. So Jaron Glover wasn't even top 6 last year. Nevertheless, you're replacing a lot. I think, though, that all eyes have to be on Jaron Glover this fall. 6'1" receiver, redshirt sophomore. But even though he's just a redshirt sophomore, he's got to be the other alpha in this room. There's not a lot of experience, just like we went over. Montorie Foster, he's going to be your A guy, right? But, man, I think there's going to be, not to use the P word, Brendan, but I think there's a lot of pressure going on Jaron Glover here. A guy that, did dip in the transfer portal. He had a visit with Georgia. 6'1", 210-pound receiver. We've heard a lot about him just from the whispers of the practice in the offseason. I think that's the pressure receiver. Is it not?
I think it's going to be kind of pressure on the room as a whole, because somebody's going to have to step up, right? Montorie Foster did his job last year. We expect him to have another solid season, but outside of him, it's kind of question mark central. I mean, Glover, is he going to step up? What's Gates going to do? Alante Brown's is he going to have a better year? So, I mean, those would be probably, my guess would be your top 4 receivers, but they all got to increase their production significantly for this offense to have success in the passing game. And if you wanted to point to Glover as the guy who needs to step up the most, to step into maybe that number 2 role behind Foster, if you want to point to Gates, or if you want to point to Brown, I think those 3 have probably the most pressure of the receivers to really step up. But Glover's probably the most talented, I would say. I mean, with the best potential as well, because he's a redshirt sophomore. Got interest from Georgia. Took a visit to Georgia when he was in the transfer portal. So there's something there. He's got decent size too. So we'll see, man. I think it's going to be Glover, Gates, Brown. Pressure's probably on those 3.
That Georgia visit, is just the strangest thing to me, because I think that was the only other school that he visited. And to me, that's not nothing. That's not just some random SEC school that he just went down and visited that, it was the school in my backyard growing up. He's from Sarasota, Florida. It's not like he grew up in Athens, Georgia. So that's just hard for me mentally to get over, combined with the fact what we've heard from whether they're players inside that practice room or any other media members that have heard that too, that he is shining because he didn't get to play a full season last year. Maybe a lot of this just seems misplaced just because, we haven't seen a full season out of him and we've only seen 261 yards out of him. But man, someone else has to play opposite wide out of Montorie Foster. I think right now he's going to be the leader in the clubhouse for that. Unless, you know what, do you see any of the other young guns, the new guys or the redshirt freshmen or true freshmen? Nick Marsh, 6'2", Jalen Smith, Isaiah Johnson, or 6'4", true freshman Jalen Brown. Do you see any of those 4 guys having a nice season coming up this fall?
Yeah, well, the easy answer is Nick Marsh. I mean, he's going to play this season, whether it be he jumps into the starting lineup or whether he just receives second-team reps. He's going to play, and he's going to have an impact this season. So that's kind of the easy answer. But diving a little bit more deep, Isaiah Johnson's one of the fastest players on this team. If something were to happen to Alante Brown again, whether he's just not as productive, even though I think he fits into this system better with this staff than he did the previous staff, has kind of a speedy slot receiver. Try saying that 5 times fast.
Right, that's tough.
I think if something happens to Brown, injury, God forbid, or he just doesn't perform up to the level he's expected to, Isaiah Johnson's, I think, ready to step up and kind of into that slot receiver position. So I would watch out for Johnson, kind of more under the radar name. And obviously Nick Marsh is going to be one to watch for sure.
As odd as it is, like I feel like Alante Brown, the guy that has the most college experience amongst this wide receiver room, I still feel like he's the biggest question mark in this room because we've heard Jonathan Smith talk about him in the offseason, how he was impressed with him. That was one of the early practice sessions too. The question was, who have you been impressed by? That was one of the few names that he dropped. He only had 3 catches for 27 yards last year. So like we are really hoping that this is going to be the system for him, right?
Yeah, like I said, I think he fits into this system much better because when Smith and Lindgren, they used a lot of those super fast, quick slot receivers, just design plays for them. Like you look at a guy like Silas Bolden. If you don't know who he is, look him up on YouTube, watch his tape a little bit. Stood out, great player at Oregon State. He's small, but it's incredibly quick, and they use that to their advantage. And now Bolden's now at Texas, so we kind of parlayed that into a big-time transfer to Texas. Yeah. So Johnson, Brown, I think they're in a good spot to be successful this season based on who they have coaching them. I think it's kind of on them. We'll see what they got this year.
It'll be fascinating to see because if you go back to the spring showcase, it was Isaiah Johnson out there with the ones. I mean, he is a speed demon. But then again, like they were also looking for a slot receiver, like Javarius Johnson?
From Auburn.
Javarius Johnson. Yeah, that went to UCF. I mean, so look, that they have who they have right now. It's going to be one of those two guys, I would presume. But a lot of question marks with this wide receiver group. But with all that said, all the question marks, with all like the returning production that they have to replace from last year, why do I feel optimistic about them? Is it just because I'm a crazy homer, not a slappy?
Probably. Well, first of all, I mean, we assume the quarterback play is going to be better. I mean, it was pretty bad last year, inconsistent last year. Receivers didn't really have much time to develop chemistry with those quarterbacks because we're constantly switching in and out between Kim, Hauser, and Levitt. So now, hopefully, barring injury, Childs is going to be the consistent starter. He's going to start all season, hopefully, so they can have time to establish that consistency, establish that chemistry with him. And I think that will pay off. And also, he's just a better quarterback in general compared to the other three. No disrespect to them, but Childs more talented. I think he's going to perform better than those three did last year. So I think there's room to be optimistic for these receivers because of that quarterback play, but also room to be a little bit pessimistic because there's not a ton of returning production, because there's a lot of question marks. There's potential, but they got to fulfill it.
Maybe it's also, too, maybe it's some of the guys that we didn't even mention, those tight ends, like Jack Velling, like Brendan Parachek, Michael Masunis, because Brian Lindgren at Oregon State, the Jonathan Smith offense, whoever you want to, credit it to, they utilize the tight ends pretty efficiently over there, and that's only going to help things for the wide receivers. So it's optimism.
Tight end depth is going to be huge, too, because Lindgren likes to use those 2 tight end sets, and if Parachek and Hopper are still banged up going into the season, that's not good. You got to have a couple healthy tight ends. Obviously, got Masunis as well, so we'll see.
That's true. Well, Brendan, thank you so much for hopping on, chatting with us, lending us your insight, your knowledge, all on a day that is just always a stress-free, very relaxing day. On a day you had to move out. So my goodness gracious, what a gentleman you are before hopping in the car, driving down to Indianapolis. Cannot thank you enough. Where can the people find you, your hard work, and just go ahead and plug whatever you need to, my man.
Yeah, for sure. So check us out, SpartansIllustrated.com. We have a whole football preview series. We're previewing every single position group for Michigan State heading into the season. We'll have coverage from Big Ten Media Days coming up on Wednesday and throughout the rest of the week. So check us out there, SpartansIllustrated.com. Would be greatly appreciated if you'd become a subscriber as well. Follow me on Twitter at BMoreCFB as well. So been a long day, but always appreciate you having me on, Matt.
There you go. Absolutely, guys. And hey, folks, until next time, which we will be joined by another guest. You may know the guy, Brian Lewerke. Any questions on the quarterback position, go ahead. Again, lockedonspartans@gmail.com if you have any questions for Brian. But until then, gang, enjoy the rest of your day. Again, Wednesday's Michigan State's Day at noon, Big Ten Network. But until all of that, hey, love you all. Go green.